of national soil legislation in regional cooperation, but also to outline regional issues where two or more states could cooperate with each other to manage a common soil problem or soil problems based on some form of ecological, eco-geographic approach. But we need to consider such things as basic principle and also basic aspects of responsibility. And in this context, a global soil instrument could state as a basic principle for regional cooperation, where states should have, in accordance with UN Charter and the principles of international law, the sovereign right to exploit their own soil resources pursuant to their own environmental policies, and the responsibility to ensure that activities within their jurisdiction or control do not cause damage to soil resources of other states or of areas beyond the limits of national jurisdiction. But most importantly, to cooperate with other states to improve the ecological integrity of soil resources. In relation to the rights and responsibility of individual states, parties would have a duty to ensure the security of soil resources for the benefit of present and future generations, and to develop general measures for the purpose of implementing that duty. And in this regard, basic rights could extend to such things as the need to have a healthy soil environment, the need to have ready access to information, participation in planning and decision making in relation to the use of soils, access to judicial and administrative proceedings, and taking action to rectify a soil problem. In the context of basic responsibility, the soil instrument could provide for parties to introduce national soil legislation for the security and sustainable use of soils, including provision for adequate human resources and institutional support systems. Parties could enter into agreements and arrangements regarding transboundary cooperation in the management of soil resources. Now, one area of work that we've put a lot of energy into in the work of the specialist group is the development of guidelines for the development of national soil legislation. And there is a publication available at the back of the room which includes something like 100 or more generic essential elements that states can choose and mix and match in different formats and different structures to construct a soil law which would have focus in particular direction of their area of national interest. So the types of mechanisms which could appear within a global instrument in relation to regional cooperation and soil management could include such things as provision for transboundary agreements, providing for amendments of existing agreements or the drafting of new or additional agreements, the use of strategy and action plans, and these could be developed under foreign donor programs, a guideline of standards expected in cooperation, a guideline for drafting national soil legislation, and an annex which would outline the main soil issues that are resident in particular regions of the world. And under the concept of zero net land degradation it's been introduced by the first two speakers, using scientific information and ecological information, it would be possible to develop a guideline of regional soil issues. So I want to briefly now talk about two examples of cooperation between states that indicate the type of mechanisms that could be considered in a global soil instrument. And these areas include Northeast Asia, the northern part of China and the Mongolian grasslands, and the region known as the High Pamir and Pamir Alai Mountains of Central Asia. So looking firstly at Northeast Asia, the area that is under consideration in this presentation is primarily the steppes which occupy about 70% of Mongolia. And most of the region of Inner Mongolia in the northern central part of China. This is just a slide that was taken from a windstorm in the year 2008 in April that shows a huge dust cloud extending from the southern part of Mongolia across the top of the northern part of China and heading towards the Pacific Ocean. So, in relation to this area, the common or regional soil degradation problems includes such things as loss of soil organic matter, the ever-expanding problem of biomass harvesting. Wind erosion is very extensive. There's a water erosion problem. Soil nutrients are in depleted state. But the area of grasslands and the steppes of northern China and Mongolia have a very important role to play in the management of a number of climate change impacts. And the type of cooperative efforts that's been taking place over this area of land include the development of a nationally appropriate mitigation action for grassland management. This is largely being led in the Mongolian area, where under the processes of the UN FCCC for the formation of NAMA, Nationally Appropriate Mitigation Action, there's a very strong focus on addressing soil degradation as a way of sustainably managing the grasslands. Also, there's been the development of methods for soil carbon accounting in the agricultural sector, and there's been an identification of the legal and policy framework for soil management in each part of this region, the two parts of this region. For example, in China, the legal framework to manage grasslands includes the Desertification Prevention and Control Law, the Water and Soil Conservation Law, which was revised in 2011, the 2002 Grassland Law, and the 2003 Agricultural Law. On the Mongolian side, the legal framework includes Soil Protection and Desertification Control Law, which is a new piece of legislation that's just been introduced by the Parliament, and also the Pasture Land Law, which focuses more directly on the ecological and sustainable aspects of pastoral management. And another law being the Subsoil Law of 1995, which is on the Mongolian Environmental Law Reform Program for amendment in the next session. Moving now to the Central Asian region of the high Pamir Alai Mountains, all of this area of land is above 3,500 metres and extends up to 7,800 metres, the Lennon Peak. It's a high altitude area which has a very unique biodiversity system, which is very much under threat from the grazing regimes that are associated with the nomadic people that live in this region. So the area I'm referring to is the southeastern part of Tajikistan, moving into the central and northeastern part of Kyrgyzstan. The problems that are common to this region include overgrazing, biomass harvesting, water erosion, and extensive areas of hill slope instability. Under a GEF-funded program since 2005, the regional cooperation in this area has included the development of a strategy and action plan that transcends both countries and sets out common areas of interest and cooperative areas of management. The agreement on cooperation in ecological monitoring that was signed between these two countries in 2001 has since been modified as an outcome of the regional cooperative program. And it's also been, most importantly, a common approach to development of soil legislation. Each of the two countries have worked in unison on that. just last week, the Kyrgyz Parliament introduced its new soil protection law. At this stage, the soil protection law in Tajikistan is going into its final stages of redrafting. But again, to give you an example of the range of national laws that are critical in the cooperative program, on the Kyrgyz side, the mountain law, the pasture law, and the new soil fertility law or soil protection law that has just been introduced. And on the Tajik side, the pasture law and the agricultural land law. Just on this point here, in relation to pasture law, globally there is quite a range of legislation that deals with the management of pastoral land, in particular land that's grazed and in many parts of the world grazed on a shifting or a nomadic basis. But pasture law in the context of this region that I'm talking about now is a specific type of law that focuses on the management of grazing on grassland regimes. So, in conclusion, the investigations that have been carried out under the specialist group of the Commission on Environmental Law indicate that there is a range of provisions that can be included in a global instrument for soil to encourage regional cooperative efforts to manage common soil problems between two or more states. Existing regional cooperative programs, from our experience, have quite successfully used a number of mechanisms that together, and with other mechanisms that we still need to think about and draw more examples, could start to form the basis of a general guideline under a global soil instrument. Thank you.
Ian told us about the importance of encouraging regional cooperation through transponder agreements, strategy and actions plan, and guidelines and others, and show us some cases in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Now we have Professor Rob Fowler. He's a member of the CEL Specialist Group on Sustainable Use of Soil and Desertification, and also the chair of the IUCN Academy of Environmental Law. A professor in the School of Natural and Built Environments of the University of South Australia in Adelaide. He will speak about the other international environmental law aspects of soil contamination and soil carbon sequestration.
Thank you, Shannon. It's now good afternoon to you all. In thinking about what to contribute to this workshop, I felt it was probably best to try to build on what I knew would be the presentations from Luke, Ian and Ben, which I think have made an overwhelming case for the development of a new global instrument on soils which will have a wider compass than the current desertification convention. And I selected two aspects of soils which I think raise clear challenges in terms of regional, national and international policy and law, and where there are perhaps difficult questions to answer in terms of the delineation of the boundaries of a future global instrument. Soils, as we've heard this morning, are a complex process. How do I get this to, let me do it again, I had this problem yesterday, how do you click forward?
Just have to click left.
Click the left. That's what I did. Okay, thank you. Soils are a very complex part of our environment, and the threats to them, as we've heard already, come not only will come from issues such as erosion, desertification, sealing, and decline in biodiversity. But these two additional areas of soil contamination and carbon loss are also very important aspects of soil management as well, and it's those that I want to address with you this morning. And to make the point that at the moment much of the discussion, including what we've heard today so far, has been around the land degradation, desertification context in relation to soils, but to note that in fact if we're going to be considering a new protocol or a new instrument, it will be necessary to think a little bit more about some of these other aspects. In a broad sense, what I would suggest is that there are really three options to consider when trying to work out where to fit matters such as soil contamination and carbon sequestration in soils into this dialogue concerning a new instrument. Could these be matters that would be picked up within this proposed instrument? It would clearly extend its ambit well beyond the land degradation context in the sense in which we've historically addressed it. Do we need perhaps a separate instrument to deal with soil contamination, and particularly in the context of soil carbon? Could we hope, in all of the complexities of the climate change negotiations, for soils to actually have a place in those negotiations in a way which goes beyond the unhappy situation that Luke described in his presentation? Or should we in fact be thinking a little bit along the lines of some of the work that's been done by Ian Hannam and Ben Moore about promoting at first instance some form of bottom-up approach where we encourage national legislation on soil contamination, soil carbon, by developing some kind of model which could be adopted or used as a basis for the development of national measures. So it's within that framework that I'm going to just briefly speak about these two issues. I'll start with soil contamination, and here I want to make a brief acknowledgement to a PhD student who I recently completed supervising with a very successful thesis on the subject of the role of international law in relation to site contamination. One of her examiners was in fact in the room, and the results of that